A few days ago, I was watching an Iron Pineapple video about 9 Souls-like games I've never heard of. If you don't know what that is, Iron Pineapple is a video series where he goes and takes a look at some very small, Souls-like games to show them to a larger audience, whether good or bad. At the start of each of these videos, he explains what a Souls-like is in the simplest of terms, a game like Dark Souls. But in his latest video in the series, he adds a part where he says,
but I'm not sure if it's possible for someone to give a definition of what a Souls-like actually is.
and Vati follows with a joke about a roll mechanic. This got me thinking, is it possible to make an accurate way of determining if a game is a Souls-like? I looked through both YouTube and the internet for an answer and couldn't find one, so I set off on my own journey to define a Souls-like. Before we get into the definition, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the word Souls-like has been fashioned into over the years. Since the popularization of Dark Souls, the word Souls-like has been thrown around as kind of a blanket term for any game that makes a journalist actually have to overcome a difficult challenge. Many articles calling games that are obviously not Souls-likes the Dark Souls of X game genre were published during this time. This created some anger in the community, as Dark Souls was being misrepresented. But the time of this phenomenon has passed, with other game journalists even writing their own articles about how they dislike people saying the Dark Souls of. That leaves us in a weird position. We know what a misrepresentation of the genre looks like, but we don't really have a way to represent it well. While doing my research on the subject and asking many Souls veterans about what they thought, it became apparent that the definition of a Souls-like would be less like what you would see in a dictionary, and more like a formula. To make this formula, I would need to categorize all the aspects of a Souls game to see how they would translate into a Souls-like. While I'm explaining each aspect, keep in mind that I might not have everything you personally associate with a Souls game, but I did try my hardest to talk to as many people as I could to get the largest perspective. Starting off with the obvious one, each Souls game is difficult. It's just part of the experience, and although the difficulty can be modulated in some ways by the player, that's a bit out of the scope of this video. Secondly, the games have Metroidvania-style level design and exploration that gives the player the freedom to really choose where to go at most points in the game. The Souls games are also famous for their atmosphere. This aspect can be very subjective, but in the end it boils down to if it looks like Dark Souls, and if it feels like Dark Souls. Next is what I like to call the fashion aspect. You have lots of creative freedom when it comes to making a character and choosing a build. Testing out these builds is, in my opinion, a core part of the experience. Dark Souls gameplay is mainly based around strategically finding a way to take out enemies and bosses with the limited stamina that you have, which is why stamina management is such an integral part of the game. One thing we all know about the Souls games is how their stories are told, mostly through obtuse NPC character interactions and item descriptions. Pretty much, if you had to watch a lore video to understand, then yeah. Now for some in-game mechanic that I decided would be important enough to make it onto the list. A dodge roll, a bonfire or an equivalent, enemies that drop souls or a similar upgrade material, a multiplayer summoning system, a critical mechanic, like a backstabber or a post, a parry system, an Estus flask or an equivalent, dropping your own souls after death, shortcuts of any kind, and lastly, bosses. These are the aspects that when put together make a Souls game, but they aren't all of equal importance, so I separated them into 3 main groups: core, supporting, and mechanics, each with their own point values all adding up to 100. Core aspects are what make a Souls game at its very basic level, a difficult Metroidvania style game with bosses, which does encompass many games that aren't Souls-likes, so we're gonna have to get a little bit more specific with the next tier. Supporting aspects are what make a game feel like Dark Souls, the storytelling, the atmosphere, and how you actually play the game. The mechanical aspects create a game that plays like Dark Souls. Without them, it's hard to consider something a Souls-like at all. For our little test, we'll consider a 60 passing, and therefore making something a Souls-like. And now that we have our formula set up, it's time to test some games. Sekiro is FromSoft's latest release and has been met with great acclaim throughout the Soulsborne community, but it's a large departure from FromSoft's previous franchises. When we put it to the test, you can see it barely scrapes by as a Souls-like, mainly on the fact that it shares most of its mechanics with Dark Souls. The only reason that this is particularly close is that because Sekiro is significantly more linear than the Souls series, and in my opinion, doesn't get the Metroidvania points. But either way, it's a Souls-like. Before doing the research for this video, I had never really seen a comparison of Dead Cells to Dark Souls, but it turns out they exist. Let's see if they're right. Well, Dead Souls misses the mark for a couple of reasons. One is just that Dead Cells is a roguelite, so the exploration style really isn't one of a Metroidvania. I'm not saying a roguelite Souls-like can't exist, I'm just saying that Dead Cells doesn't really resemble a Souls game close enough to be considered one. As most of you probably know, Hollow Knight is my favorite game of all time. But for this, I'm gonna have to set my cares aside and judge it objectively. To my surprise, it actually scored a bit better than Sekiro. This is because Hollow Knight is the first game so far to have all of the core aspects, which really cement its place as a Souls-like. If I showed you Nioh and Dark Souls footage back to you when you were a kid, you would probably think they were the same thing, and it shows in the scoring. As the only areas Nioh is really missing are the Metroidvania and shortcuts aspect, because the game is just really linear. Phew, this next one, it made me laugh a little bit. And I can tell you right off the bat, no, Legends of Zelda Breath of the Wild is not a Souls-like. I don't know where this take came from, but can someone please put it back? I don't think I really need to explain, but as the person making this video, it's kind of my job. So, Breath of the Wild isn't difficult, it doesn't resemble a Metroidvania style at all, and its atmosphere isn't Soulsy at all. Blasphemous is what I would say if someone said that Blasphemous wasn't a Souls-like. It encapsulates most of what a Souls-like is, while taking a lot of creative liberty to create something truly different. Now, I've heard Salt and Sanctuary was just 2D Dark Souls, but damn. To put that chart into perspective, if I scored Bloodborne with it, the graph would be exactly the same. This shows just how closely Salt and Sanctuary follows the Soulsborne model, with the only thing missing being multiplayer summoning. And even that was close, because SNS has local co-op gameplay, which I wasn't sure if it counted or not. I can't go over every single disputed game, but I saved what I thought was the most controversial pick for last. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order released in November of 2019, and was unlike any game that EA had ever published before. This led to major outlets not really knowing what to call Fallen Order, and eventually some placed it in the Souls-like category. On the surface, it seems like one, showing pretty much all of its mechanics with Dark Souls. But if you look a bit deeper, it's not a Souls-like at all. There are difficulty options, you can't change your build, and the story is super clear-cut. It's just not a Souls-like. That's enough examples for now. If you want to test some games on your own, I'll leave a Google Drive link to the chart as a pinned comment. But first, let me clear something up. This formula isn't to test how much of a Souls-like a game is. A game is either a Souls-like or it isn't. Maybe in the future we'll see a genre system for Souls-like similar to the one we have with roguelikes and roguelites today. For example, a Souls-lite could be a game like Fallen Order that shares mechanics but not the setting of a Soulsborne game. Or the term Souls-like could just die off altogether. If you have any opinions on this chart or changes that I should make sure to tell me in the comments, or join my Discord and tell me there. Either way, I'm grateful. But that's enough theorizing for now. Thanks for watching, guys. I tried to make this video as unbiased as possible, and to do that I asked a lot of people, but the one that helped me out the most throughout this process was Xanathar. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and definitely go check out Zan's channel. Peace.